Welcome to this special webinar. My name is Brian Cochran. I'm a financial planner here at John Moore and Associates. And with me today I have Dr. Linda Phelps here to present this very important topic. She's entitled it Lighting the Pathways to Healing. She'll tell you a little more about how she came to that wonderful title. Before we dive in and allow Linda to share her prepared remarks, I'd like to do is tell you more about John Moore Associates for those of you who are seeing this and not familiar with our practice. We are a 20-year-old registered investment advisor founded here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Today we are calling from our Albuquerque office. We have the Albuquerque office on the left on the slide you see in front of you. Our Scottsdale office on the right was opened in 2013 to serve our Arizona clients and to grow in that wonderful marketplace. We have a 9-person team that you can see here, made up of 3 generations of experienced professionals, with our founder, John Moore, and his wife, Connie, as Generation 1. We have 4 members in our Generation 2, all age 50 plus or minus, with extensive experience in financial services, as well as our 3rd generation, all in our 20s and 30s, preparing to serve clients, their children, and their grandchildren for generations to come. So a rather unique practice providing financial services, including financial planning and investment management. Today's presentation is actually part of a 3-part webinar series that we are hosting. I feel blessed to be able to bring in 3 very qualified and experienced experts in different fields. And the motivation of this is to seek out counsel and advice from those who know more on the topic than we might as financial advisors. And it's really inspired by the scripture you see in front of you. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. And our first session was with Glenda Durano. We actually recorded that about a week ago, and it's available as a recording on our website, johnmoore.com/media. Glenda provided a wonderful session on college planning. We have Linda Phelps here with us today to talk about grief, the process of grief, with this wonderful presentation that you'll be hearing this afternoon. And then we're wrapping up with Susan Stewart, who is the founder of Decisions in Care, and she'll be talking about the importance of healthcare planning and how to make good decisions care for a loved one, whether that's a spouse or maybe a parent who is going through a healthcare emergency. And her resources are incredible in this space, and we look forward to hearing her comments coming up in about a week. That'll be Thursday the 27th at 1 o'clock. So this wonderful series, all these presentations will be available along with our regular quarterly market updates that we provide as recordings on our website. Again, johnmoore.com/media is where you can find that information. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Linda to go through the slides that she's prepared for us today. I had the blessing of sitting with Linda and going through this presentation already, and I sure learned a lot, and I hope that everybody listening to this recording will learn as much as I did, enjoy the content, and take advantage of this wealth of knowledge that Linda provides. So Linda, welcome, and if you want to start off, why don't you tell us about your background and sort of how you came to the 2 institutions you work for, French Funerals and Cremations on one side, and also the Grief Resource Center, which was part of your inspiration.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here today as one of your guests. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am a board-certified professional counselor. And for the last 8 years, I have served as the director of the grief counseling program at French Funerals and Cremations. And now I serve as the executive director of the new Grief Resource Center. The Resource Center is a new independent nonprofit organization that has been created to serve our New Mexico community. And French Funerals created this organization. They recognized that there was a broader need in the community to support individuals who were experiencing grief, not just from death, but from many different life events, such as illness, accidents, divorce. So the Resource Center offers a central location that increases an awareness of the many different reasons that people grieve, and it offers an opportunity for professional providers and organizations to come together, share their expertise, and partner with the Grief Resource Center to provide a wide range of services for our community. So it's a new and important offering to the community.
Yeah. It's always great to have someone who can help care for the caregivers in this situation. They handle and bring so much empathy in taking on other people's grief. That's a great resource. So Linda, take us through sort of what we'll be covering today and these key topics that you've chosen to share in the time we have together.
All right, thank you. I have titled this presentation, Lighting the Pathways to Healing, because we all have this concept of pathways. Everyone in life is unique. Everyone in life experiences grief differently, and everyone in life, for the most part, can experience some benefit from help that is offered to them when they are on their own grief journey. When you or someone important to you encounters loss in life and begins their journey, it's important to remember that there's no one template that fits all. There's no one right or wrong way to grieve. And as long as your experience is changing, if it's fluid, if you're not hurting yourself, if you're not hurting someone else, chances are very good that you are experiencing grief in a very healthy way. So the purpose of my webinar today is to provide an overview of the grief experience, and I have listed several points that I would like to talk about. This is a very extensive topic, so I've elected to limit my discussion to the following. Grief is a multifaceted response to loss, what the grief experience can be like, what takes place during grief counseling, strategies that can be helpful in coping with grief, and how grief can be experienced over time, and provide a general timetable. Grief is defined as a multifaceted response to loss, and it's particularly the response to someone or something where a strong bond has been created. And it can be experienced on all dimensions of life, the social, spiritual, the emotional, the physical. And very often the death of a loved one is considered the greatest loss experienced, but there are many examples of loss that may cause grief. A person can unexpectedly lose a job. Floods can take away a person's home and their life treasures. A person can be diagnosed with a serious illness. An important relationship may end, or a person may even lose a beloved pet. All of these things can result in profound grief for those involved. Over my many years of counseling experience, I have had opportunities to work in many different capacities with many different people. And the importance of understanding the role that grief was having in my client's life became paramount. I recognize that grief manifests itself in so many aspects of life and can affect each of us in so many different ways. And it's important to remember, again, that no one template fits all. There are many, many professional resources available in the community that can lead those who are grieving to a better and a more contented life.
So you were talking about these different types of loss, and when I see this, I know people have gone through all these things, but do you find that people maybe don't identify the feelings they're having as grief? So if someone is laid off from a career they've had for 30 years and they know that something's not right, they feel off, do you find that it's hard for people to identify that as grief and therefore seek any type of help from someone with your expertise?
A lot of times people don't even know they're grieving. They may experience some feelings of depression or some physical symptoms, and when we discuss it and talk about it, very often that is part of the grief experience. And so I try to observe this and help them seek additional help if it's needed, but to make them aware that, yes, indeed, this is what's happening to them.
That's good.
I I think it's important to understand some of the concepts about the grief experience itself. And one way that I have found that is particularly helpful is the description shared by writer and author, the specialist in grief and loss, Alan Wolfelt. And what he says is to begin by thinking of grief as a container. This container is inside of you. It holds many of your responses experienced at the time of loss. These would be thoughts, feelings, images. Grief is internal, it's private, and it's unique to you. And it will remain inside of you until the decision is made to express it in some way outside, to express it publicly. So the concept of mourning is when you make that decision to take that grief inside of you and express it openly. This public expression of grief, this mourning process, is one of the most important tasks in the grief experience, and it can be very painful. It includes getting in touch with your full range of thoughts and feelings, moving across the continuum, identifying certainly those feelings of anger and abandonment, helplessness, but also moving back across the continuum and identifying those many positive feelings of pride and compassion. The mourning process, this expression of grief, is more than just getting in touch with thoughts and feelings. It's also about movement. It's about telling your story. It's about describing the relationship you shared with this loved one and including it all of the good, but also all the parts that are not so good. That is remembering your loved one as realistically as possible and understanding why this person was important to you, and also to remember what you will take from the relationship as you move forward now on your own. We know that if we deny our grief, it will accumulate within, and these unacknowledged thoughts and feelings will come out eventually. Sometimes, if they are denied, they will come out in unhealthy ways. There's a wonderful writer and speaker, Paula Darcy, who is also an authority in grief and loss and speaks from her own experiences. And in some of her writing, she talks about what can happen when one denies their grief. And she uses this wonderful image. She says that denying grief is very much like trying to hold two beach balls underwater, one beach ball in each hand. The individual is working very hard trying to hold each one down because all they want to do is pop up to the surface. And in the struggle now to keep these balls underwater, so much of the individual's energy is all used up. And in the end, there is no energy left to embrace life. But she continues to say, if you acknowledge your grief, if you mourn your loss, you can begin to experience healing. And when we talk about healing, we're not talking about a clinical term. Healing means to be made whole. And this wholeness is fundamentally in a psychological and spiritual process of finding meaning in life. And as you begin to heal and integrate the reality that your loved one is no longer physically present, then you can begin the process of experiencing a renewed capacity to become involved in life once again. It can be good, but it will be different. You move forward now with new goals, new objectives, new purpose, new meaning. And Alan Wolfelt says that mourning is truly an act of love. He says that you grieve as deeply as you love. Many people ask me what happens in the counseling session. They they say to me, I really don't know what to say. I don't know how to respond. So I want to talk just briefly about what my role is in the counseling session. Grief manifests itself in so many different ways, and it's so important to have an empathetic and caring approach to help people who are in pain. So let me describe my role and what typically takes place. My role as the grief counselor is to support and validate the individual in caring and empathetic ways. And so what I try to do is provide a safe place for this person. Part of healing is not fixing or doing, but providing a safe place that doesn't change the person, but it allows the person to make changes. I support the individual as they tell their story. That is, as they describe the relationship they shared with the loved one who has died. I try to listen without judgment or comparison. And finally, I am very willing as another human being to stand with that person in their pain. Another part of my role is to educate. I provide information about what the individual is experiencing at the moment. It's sometimes very important to just normalize the experience. I discuss some of the feelings that they can expect in the future. I observe normal grief symptoms the person is experiencing and offer strategies, sometimes we call these tools, to help them cope more effectively. We'll be talking about these strategies more in just a few moments. Another part of my role as the grief counselor is to provide a wide range of resources to match specific needs. And there are many resources. They can include referrals to other service providers in the community for ongoing follow-up. They can include referrals to organizations, referrals to support groups, and also referrals to helpful websites.
So one thing you talked about at the beginning is it's not about fixing someone. And do you find that for some people, maybe men in particular, they come in and they say, Dr. Phelps, fix me. I'm not right. I know something's wrong. I'm feeling something I don't want to feel anymore. So can you please fix this for me so that when I leave here today, I don't have to face this anymore? Is that a common expectation maybe when someone comes in with this grief experience?
Yes, it's a common desire. And when someone walks into my office, my first impulse is to fix or take away their pain. But at the same time, I know that I cannot do that. And even if I could, it would not be helpful to that person. Emotional healing happens not because the pain is taken away. It's because the pain is given its due. It's because the pain is allowed to be experienced, to be touched, and then to be processed. So my goal in working with people who have experienced loss is not to fix them, but it's to, again, stand beside them and help them express that grief that's within, and in doing so, move forward.
Wonderful.
I want to talk about some of the strategies that can be helpful in coping with grief. As I mentioned earlier, grief can be experienced on all dimensions of life, and sometimes it can be helpful to look at some of the common symptoms of grief experienced and then take a look at some of the strategies or tools that can be helpful. Again, this is a very large area, so I'm going to limit my discussion on a few. I'm going to begin with the physical dimension. And on this physical dimension, it's important to become an expert in self-care. Know what soothes you, and then build on that. So let's talk about sleep for a moment. Sleep disturbances are very common when one is experiencing grief, and they most often occur when that individual is sorting out anxieties. Sleep is perhaps the most non-negotiable aspect of good brain health because it supports mood, it supports memory, and it is part of healing. And when one is in a deep sleep, this is the time that the brain takes to organize as well as recycle information. So some of the strategies that I offer to my clients, keep closely to the same sleep schedule every day, if possible. If you can get 30 minutes of bright light exposure in the morning and then turn your lights down about 2 hours before you plan to go to bed. That's not always easy, but if you can do that, it can be helpful. Try activities that can help you relax. There are many. Yoga, meditation. Keep a small pad of paper by your bed so that any thoughts that may be rattling around can be captured and held securely until you get up in the morning and can take action steps to address each one. And I just want to make a comment or two on dreams because dreams are very common after loss. They're so common that if you look into the literature, they are categorized. There's the visitation dream. This is when you're spending time with your loved one, and that environment may be quiet and contemplative, and it can be very comforting, very blissful moment of reunion. The message dream. This conveys some important information or instruction to you, and it may be for you or it may be for someone else. The reassurance dream. This may offer a message of affirmation and can confirm that your loved one is okay, but it can also confirm that you're okay too. Then there's the trauma dream. This can be painful. This is one that often rehashes the circumstances surrounding the loss. However, it serves an important purpose, and that's to allow you to slowly take in and digest what has happened. And it's most common in the early days of grieving. But one recommendation, if you continue to have trauma dreams that are frightening and that remain traumatic, it's important to seek help for this. Let's look at eating for just a moment. It may be difficult to eat, but you still have to provide fuel for your body because grief can use an enormous amount of energy. Eat frequent, small, nourishing snacks. And remember, now is not a time to go on a weight reduction diet. Moving on now to the emotional dimension. The hallmark of emotions during grief is unpredictability. You will be up, down, all over. Grief captures body, mind, and spirit. And one writer said, it will hold you hostage. Let all of the body, mind, and spirit go, and then capture them again. And you are left to cope as well as you can. So many of my clients who are experiencing this say to me, are you sure I am not going crazy? It feels crazy, I tell them, but that's grief. It's normal. Some of the emotions that are very common are relief, guilt, anxiety, worry, sighing repeatedly, just kind of breathing in and out, idealizing or waiting for the return of that loved person, and yes, even embarrassment can be part of this. Under any other circumstance, you would be terrified that you were ill or going crazy. But once again, as long as your emotions are changing and moving, as long as they are evolving and you are able to function in daily life activities and not hurting yourself, chances are you're on the right track. Of course, it is crucial to seek help for any potentially harmful signs, such as isolating or expressing constant feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. Do not write this off to grieving. This is the time to accept help. Some of the strategies that can be helpful. On the emotional dimension, give yourself permission to feel these emotions. One way of doing this is by embracing mindfulness. And what this means is remain in the present moment. No matter how you're feeling, let the present moment be what it is. Stay with it, feel it. It will move on, and so will you.
I love the way you put that about allowing yourself the emotion. You know this is coming, accept it, embrace that emotion is what you're really saying, and allow it to pass. Then naturally, no. But what you were saying before is if you're really stuck on a certain feeling for too long and it's becoming harmful to you, that's when you start to say, okay, this is abnormal. I need to seek some type of assistance.
Right. And to embrace emotions, sometimes you have to give yourself permission to do this, and that's not always easy to do, but it's important. Another strategy on this emotional dimension is to process some of your emotions by writing. Write down your thoughts and feelings, and just the exercise of doing this alone can reduce much of the intensity, because you're not working on the computer, but you are using your hand and your body to be involved in this process. And there's some advantages to writing. It can help you clarify your feelings. It can give you perspective when you go back and read what you have written. It's a way of storing memories on paper and not just in your body. It helps you monitor your progress through grief. And another important thing about writing, it helps you tailor your story of loss into something you can manage, into something you can handle. And what was once overwhelming is now something that can be manageable. And what once felt out of control can now feel like you have some control. The social dimension. Social support may be abundant soon after your loss. Friends and family are gathering. They will provide support for you. But after a while, people will return to their homes and routines. And those in your support system, in your support network, will get back to their lives. And it may seem as though you have been abandoned. Sadly, some of your friends may not be calling anymore. They may even be avoiding you. And I'm often asked, why is this happening? What is this all about? It's much easier to provide support right after your loss. People will attend the funeral. They can bring food. They can run errands for you initially. But after a period of time has passed, they've moved forward, they've moved on, you have not. And when they encounter you, they really don't know what to say to you. They don't know how to always help you. They may feel uncomfortable about talking about the subject of death also. And they may have their own unfinished business on this topic. These changes on the social dimension can be some of the unexpected effects of loss. So some of the ways of dealing with this are consider becoming part of a support group. A group of people who have experienced a similar loss. And if you're not big on face-to-face group meetings, consider the internet, because there are many chat rooms, chat groups, or message boards that are available if you choose to be part of that. the spiritual dimension. At the time of a loved one's death, your spiritual beliefs may sustain you and bring you comfort. You may even find that your spiritual life is deepened and renewed. On the other hand, you may discover that your spiritual life has been challenged, and it may even be in crisis now. You may find that you are doubting or questioning your experiences. God may seem distant, perhaps hostile as a result of loss. Should these beliefs be challenged after loss, it's critical, it's so important that they be acknowledged as a normal reaction. Some of the strategies here, again, let your doubts surface. You will work through your spiritual crisis as you move forward in this grief experience. Take the time out from regular worship, take it. Take the time. And return only when you're ready. Be open to less conventional ways of expressing your faith. There are many. Meditation, or even being alone in nature, can be ways. There's yoga or Tai Chi. These can all be very soothing during some of your heavy days. If you're part of a spiritual community and you feel supported here, stay in contact. But I would suggest that you consider what I call a hands-off and hands-folded approach, just for a period of time. And what I mean by this is step back, let others shoulder some of the responsibilities that you have had in your spiritual community. You will return and you will take them again, but for now, take that break. Whether experiencing spiritual renewal or that spiritual challenge, it is critical to maintain relationships. Whether they're with similar-minded friends in your community or with the rituals and practices of your spiritual discipline, or the connections to your passions and commitments, this is the time to strengthen and not sever these relationships.
So you talk about relationships, and if you know somebody, you've identified some really important factors here on all four of these categories of physical, emotional, social, and spiritual. If I see someone struggling and I say, wow, they're really not looking healthy, they're clearly not getting sleep, or they're losing weight in an unhealthy manner, or maybe I hear things coming from them that are just really angry about their network of friends or the spiritual aspect, they're angry at their church or something like that, or angry at God. What's the best way to help somebody? I mean, there's obviously listening, but if you really feel like they could use the next step in having a chance to talk to somebody who's a professional and really can provide them the resources and guidance, how do you approach it as a friend or family member?
We were talking a few minutes ago about fixing and about what our goal, but my goal is to just stand with them in their pain. If you can do that, if you can be present and help them express their grief so that they can move forward, that's critical. The other thing is to, sometimes people share their own experiences about grief and loss, and if you can share some part of that that is not overpowering or overburdening to them, but talk about some of the steps that you have done, some of the things that have been effective for you. You can even attend a support group with that person and again just accompany them. You don't have to return, but at least you're there to support them as they go into something that is unknown and something that can be overwhelming to them.
So again, trying to resist that urge to fix, but show empathy, show support.
That's right. That's right.
I like the way you mentioned this before too, about helping people understand that some of these emotions and these reactions are very normal.
Absolutely. That is so huge to remember that part. And I would say that a large percentage of people do ask me, am I okay? am I doing this right? Tell me how I need to change what I'm doing. And once again, I go back and I say there are no shoulds or should nots in this whole process. And how you do this is the correct way. And as long as you're moving forward, as long as you are experiencing some movement forward, and when I say forward, I'm not talking about large steps, I'm just talking about very tiny steps forward in daily life. As you can experience the feeling as less intense, less often, over time, then you're experiencing your grief in just the right way for you.
That's important. Yeah, very individual experience.
Absolutely unique. My next slide talks about a general timetable, how grief is experienced over time. And in this world of digital organizers and multitasking, people ask me, just that question you were talking about, Brian, asking me to give them a timeline for this experience. What can I expect? When can I expect it to be over? And this, after all, is what our lives are about. Our lives are about planning and anticipating, being proactive. But grief is very humbling for the very fact that it cannot be managed like a business or planned like a vacation. Grief takes time. But here is a general timetable. During the first month, individuals may be so busy immediately after processing paperwork, after having visitors, after tending to immediate tasks, that they have little time for processing their loss. And oftentimes they still feel that the loss is unreal, that numbness, that kind of moving through the motions, feeling confused, feeling forgetful. All normal feelings. In the third month, this may be a particularly challenging time. Friends and family may have gone. As we said earlier, other support may have stopped for now. But also, during this time, the loss is beginning to become real. In many ways, the painful task of understanding what this loss really means may just be starting for that person. Those who are not familiar with or do not understand the grief experience may be pressuring that person to get back to normal, because this is what they desire. This is what will help them. But what I always encourage people to do is do not let other people take your grief away. They've moved forward, but you've not. In months 4 to 12, the individual continues to move forward through the task of grieving, and thoughts, feelings, and images can be experienced less intensely now and less often. They'll certainly still be there. That individual will always be part of an individual's life, but that intensity and that frequency will become less intense, less often. Now there are more good days than bad days. During this time, these 4 to 12 months, the individual may be experiencing what some researchers call the ambush or a grief burst. This is when an individual may be hit by powerful thoughts or feelings that are brought about by the reminder of the loss. And this may be something very simple. This may be a fragrance. This may be a song that they've heard on the radio. Or it can be something significant. Maybe the anniversary is approaching or a birthday. Even though they are natural and normal, these unexpected and unpredictable events can still be alarming. So it's always good to know that they might happen. That's all good information. At the first anniversary of death, reactions to the anniversary may begin days or weeks before the actual date. And individuals who often describe themselves as doing well may be surprised by the intensity of this first anniversary of their loved one's death. I always tell individuals that the anticipation of an event is often worse than the event itself, and to just keep that in mind. Significant anniversaries. The first 13 months following a loved one's death can be significant. And this is the period of time when all of the firsts are experienced. The first birthdays, the first anniversaries, the first reunions, all experienced without that loved one. And these can be very difficult times. Additional support from others is often very welcome during these times.
I see people frequently do, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this, is see people who schedule travel. So maybe it's the first Christmas since the passing of a loved one, and they say, I'm not going to stay home by myself. I'm going to go on a cruise with a dear friend, or I'm going to go see my children and grandchildren in another state. Yes. Is that something that is encouraged, or is that considered running away from your grief?
That is very much encouraged, and that's an effective strategy to plan something different for that holiday or that anniversary or that birthday, and to travel to family or to make a short trip absolutely is encouraged. But one thing I do suggest is to be aware of how long you plan to stay. Sometimes you think you are up to staying for 10 days or 2 weeks, and you find that after that first day or two that you really need that quietude and time to reflect. And so I encourage people to make those plans, but make them short. And if they need to be in conversation with other people about how short they need to be, to do so. Okay. And one other part of that is when you do travel, even if you go to see family, be sure there's some space that you can retreat to, maybe the bedroom or an extra den, or some place where if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can just excuse yourself for the moment and go and do what you need to do. Be quiet, reflect, and then you can join family or friends once again.
That's it.
Okay.
Great advice.
All right. As I close today, there's one central thought to take with you. The title of my presentation is Lighting the Pathways to Healing, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we all have this concept of pathways, this uniqueness. So when you or someone important to you encounters loss in life, remember that there are many people who are willing to reach out to them. There are many resources in our community that have the ability to be a light along the pathways to healing for so many, many people with so many, many different needs. And that concludes my presentation today, and I thank you for having me here, and I thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Phelps. And just put up your contact information here, so if folks are looking for type of support that you can provide, or want to know more about this new organization, the Grief Resource Center, which really is just brand new.
Yes.
And a great organization. There's some phone numbers and emails here so that people can reach out and communicate with you if they have their own needs, or if they know a loved one or friend, a family member that needs support. It's important to have these resources available. So I'll leave that up there for a moment. But thank you, and we appreciate your time and your expertise, and of course the service you provide in this community and helping people through this difficult phase of life.
Yes, and thank you.
Well, with that, we'll wrap things up. And again, I encourage you to look back at johnmoore.com/media in the future for other content on different topics. We'll continue to bring experts like Linda here, on a regular basis so that we can provide valuable content to you and our community. Have a great day, and we look forward to sharing more with you soon.